Welcome back to The Move, where we are vibing with the book at least 10 minutes at a time.
Next 10 minutes, we're looking at Hebrews chapter 7, verses 22 to 28.
And this is where we actually ended the last episode, verse 22. This makes Jesus the guarantor of a better covenant.
That word's kind of funny. Guarantor.
Yeah.
Guaranteer.
Guaranteer.
Is guaranteer not a real word?
Guaranteer?
Yeah.
It's a real word if you want to use it. I mean, if Lil Wayne could come up with bling bling, you can come up with guaranteer.
There you go.
Right?
All right.
So what is a guaranteer?
You tell me. Guaranteer?
A guaranteer? I mean, you just made up the word, so it's on you there,
Yeah,
champ.
I guess so. I guess maybe it's like the image that I get right away is like co-signing a lease for like a house or a car. Like when my wife and I, we ended up purchasing our little home on wheels, our sprinter van. Unfortunately, we had not accrued enough credit to justify the loan that was needed for that. And so we had family that were gracious enough to co-sign it to guarantee the loan. So the implication is if we screwed up, our parents would come in and bail us out. Thankfully, we haven't screwed up yet.
Haven't screwed up. Yeah. So they guarantee the loan.
Yeah.
Their collateral, their home, their financial
Their
ability.
very being, and I guess this is where it's going, right? Their very being is what is at stake to ensure the covenant.
Well, their assets
Yeah.
are what ensure that you're going to pay back the loan that you were given for. So you bought this Sprinter van.
Sure.
And it cost you $30.
Sure.
Say this big thing cost you $30. You didn't have $30.
Didn't have $30.
Right. But you've never been broke though.
Okay,
Right?
yeah.
You didn't have $30.
You felt really, really happy about that.
Oh man, that came in so well. This dude was like, "That's not enough money." He was like, "What?"
No. What I was communicating is that if I'm in the wilderness for 100 days, I'm dead. That's why it ain't enough money. I'm literally dead.
Fair enough. 100 days. How long would you last? I give you 12 days.
I could. Well, see, here's the funny thing, because I watch a different kind of survival show, and shout out to Danny, because I'm sure Danny's will end up watching this at some point.
Danny who?
Danny Gordon.
Okay. Yeah.
I watch Survivor, which is not quite the
Oh,
same
that
as
is- no,
Alone.
No.
I'm like, yeah, let's play the game.
No. Alone, these people are like, all right, we're dropping you off in Patagonia.
Yeah.
Figure it out. Or Siberia. Figure it out. Mongolia.
Bro,
Figure it
I'm
out.
dead.
Yeah,
dude, when we
100%.
were out there for the retreat in Wyoming, you saw my face light up like the Tetons from all the mosquitoes. That was when we were living it up in style. I was suffering.
Oh, that's
I am
so
not
true.
built for the outdoors. You
That's
know
funny.
that.
That's funny.
You think I'm going to survive in Siberia?
So you got $30 for this van.
$30 for the
right?
van.
And what happened? You don't have $30 for the van. And what happens is that your in-laws, is it?
I forget who actually. No, it was my parents.
Okay, so your parents
My
come
dad.
behind, and your dad says, all right, whatever my child might owe, I guarantee it based on my assets,
Yeah.
on what I own, right? Which is very similar to the Good Samaritan parable, right?
Right. He takes the person who was beat up and abused, takes him into the inn, and says, "Hey, take care of the dude. Anything you need, I got him covered."
I got him covered. This is what makes Jesus the guarantee of a better covenant, is that his life literally covers everything, right? This is Acts chapter 13:38, that in him we have forgiveness of sins and forgiveness from everything that the law could not forgive.
Yo.
So this is why he's so much better. There's so many things that the law can't actually forgive.
Right, because part of the imagery of the law is like it's things that you've confessed. Like, well, there's many ways. I think you've highlighted in some of our Wave 1 curriculum, which if you haven't watched Wave 1 yet, go watch Wave 1. Just go YouTube search PBC Life. You should check that out. It's a good series. But I think you've highlighted how the law was inadequate in that, one, it was only meant for certain kinds of people, and two, only certain types of transgressions. Can you walk us through that?
Yeah, sure. So the law was given to a people that were delivered from Egypt into covenant with God, right? So first the law is given to this people who were quote unquote free. But in order to stay within relationship with Yahweh, who has freed them from Pharaoh, they have to actually continue being the sort of people that God has made them, right? And one of those things is that you don't participate in rites and rituals of death, right? So think about something as simple as a woman giving birth, right? A woman giving birth comes so close to death that Yahweh makes a distinction. Like, I'm not a God of death. And like, there's this thing of y'all coming close to death and cool, but the woman now has to come and offer this ritual in order to be ceremonially clean, right? That's not moral, right? That has nothing to do with morality. It just has everything to do with the state that the human experience is in, right? Additionally, if, say, me as an Israelite man, I've been freed from Pharaoh, I'm in covenant with Yahweh, and I actually touch a dead body.
Right.
There's a ritual process that needs to happen for me to maintain my covenant faithfulness with Yahweh, who's a covenant God of life.
The point wasn't that you're evil because you had to touch a dead body. Like, it's just what happens. You hang out in community long enough, and especially in the pre-modern era, you just got to deal with dead bodies. It's just one of those things. But God was trying to use this moment as an illustration to say that I am so distinct and other that even in this moment, there's a ritual that you go through to remind you of that fact.
So if you committed a sin in ignorance, right, you then had the ability to come to the sanctuary. Now, if you committed a sin, again, that had a corresponding law, right? Like if you got in a fight and you hit a woman in her belly, right, and she was pregnant. I'm doing this off the top of my head, but
It's in the text,
right? It's in the text. If she, if the kid dies, I think the requirement is,
I think it was some kind of financial compensation, if I remember.
Right? So that then there's a financial compensation, so that the law requires how you actually deal with stuff like that. Like, oh, here's one. Right, the cities of refuge.
Sure.
Right, so if you you're in the act, you and me are cutting down wood, right, and all of a sudden you with your axe handle, it's not secured properly, and because you're not a survivalist, you don't know what you're doing.
I thought you were making an allusion to another story about an axe that the head goes flying. We were in that story.
No. You and I are just chopping wood, right, and since you're not good at survival stuff, you didn't secure the head properly. You go on.
I prefer the version where I'm swinging the axe and I'm just so strong that I swing through the piece of wood.
I'm sorry, you already confessed that you're not a survivalist. We're going with this.
All right, fair enough.
And so in your backswing, the axe head flies off and it just chops me right in the neck, right? And you're like, oh my goodness, Jonathan, I love you. I'm so sorry. And I'm like, why?
I think what's been play is you're so old that your reaction speed is
wasn't fast enough. It's like, whoa. Like, Jonathan, move. I'm like, oh, right? And then, but nobody can determine whether or not you did that maliciously or not, right? You run to a city of refuge. You're in that city of refuge until the high priest dies, right? Like you can't come to the sanctuary and just simply offer something to be okay. There's a law that requires a particular action. This is what I'm illuminating, that the sanctuary service was for like ceremonial cleanliness, rites, and rituals, but then there was laws that corresponded to actions that you might take. And then there's this other category where if you committed a willful sin, there was no ritual.
Sucks.
And there was no corresponding law that actually gave you some action that you could perform. There was certain sins that you were like, yeah, we're not going to have that. You're dead.
Whoa.
One of those sins was adultery.
Uh-oh.
Right? So, for instance, if you're a man who sees a woman and you take her onto your own, but she's actually the wife of another and you sleep with her, like the response to that is, heckity.
Yikes.
Right? There's no corresponding law. So this whole idea that, oh, well, we were committed a sin and we could just take it to the sanctuary. No,
not always.
No,
sometimes, sure.
Sometimes.
But not for everything.
It's like willful sin. Like, for instance, Sabbath breaking. Willful Sabbath breaking.
Is that wild?
Right?
Yeah.
Yak. Right? So that then think of David. When David is confronted by the prophet Nathan, and he's like, yo, you are that man. You've committed the sin. Often people are like, oh, and then David, he was so repentant. He took an offering to the sanctuary. No,
he was
read
supposed
the
to
story.
die.
He was supposed to die. Nathan literally tells him right in that moment, he's like, but your sin has been taken from you. Why? Because it was a precursor of what Jesus would actually do, that he would be able to save people from sins that not even the law covered, right? And this is in Acts chapter 13. If we jump there real quick, I'll just show this to you. Acts chapter 13, and I think it's verse 38-ish around.
Okay.
Let it be known to you, therefore, brothers, that through this man forgiveness of sins is proclaimed to you. Verse 39. And by him, everyone who believes is freed from everything from which you could not be freed by the law of Moses.
Certain laws, or certain sins, certain things, there was literally no recourse. Just punishment, just justice, if you will. But here we're saying that through Jesus, even those things that the law couldn't touch, and it was just sucks to suck, you're doomed. Like you bear the penalty of your actions. Kind of like what, I don't know if you heard the story yet of Layla's testimony on Death of Life.
I have not heard it.
Her primary paradigm was, I messed up. And she did mess up. She had a child out of wedlock. So she believed for years that the reason why her life was in disarray was as retribution from God because of a bad thing. Like under the former law, yes. But through Jesus,
No. And what's really important to remember is that, wait, I just had this. Yeah, that there are, that one of the laws and one of the things that you can't actually come back from is rebellion against God. Like if you have active rebellion against him, no, right? I think Numbers 15 highlights this.
Cuts them
right?
off.
These pesha sins, these high-handed, right, sins. And this is Paul's point in Romans particularly. He's like, y'all know that we have all rebelled in this way. And we all lack the glory of God. We've all fallen short.
So that the listeners to the message in Romans might have been like, yeah, we did mess up, but we didn't do the bad sins.
Because we have the oracles of God. We have the sanctuary, and we have his faithfulness. And Paul in Romans 1-3, he's like, yeah, but do you rob temples? Yeah, do you think you having the oracles of God, that you're a guide to the blind and a light to the Gentiles? Don't you mess up as well? Having you also not actually met up to these oracles? And the Hebrew is like, who are you, oh man?
Yeah.
Oh, you Jew? Oh, you really think you got it? They're like, And this is the point of Romans 7. It's like, when the law came alive, I actually saw that I wasn't keeping it in my Hebrew way and the thought that I was complying with everything. I'm so glad I'm better than this Gentile. It's like, no, the law actually came alive, illuminated how you had fallen short and how you were actively in rebellion because you were a slave to sin and you should have died.
Wow.
And yet, there is now, therefore, no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus, for the law of the Spirit of life has set you free from the law of sin and death. This is the point of Hebrews chapter 7. There is a change in the law. Why? You've been delivered from the law of sin and death through he who is the King of righteousness, the one who sits in the city of peace. He is the guarantor of a better covenant, a guarantor of the better covenant. On what basis? Through the power of an indestructible life. He includes you in his life by him becoming the condemnation of your life.
In our previous describing of these laws, the axe head one where I accidentally kill you because you're so slow and your reaction time is lacking and your hamstrings, you can't fast. Some
they
of you
don't
guys
fire
know,
like they used
some
to.
of y'all remember that reference from Internet Church. You were saying that I would run to a city of refuge until the high priest dies. That wasn't a detail that I ever remember picking up. So if I understand the picture that you were painting, correct me if I'm wrong, I have to stay in the city of refuge, and I'm only allowed back out when the changing of guards happens.
Yeah,
is that what you were saying?
I think I have to double check on this, but I'm pretty sure that you're there until the high priest dies. Right?
Okay, so as you're looking for that, the reason why that stood out to me is because the very next thing that Hebrews is talking about is the fact that there will never be another changing of the guard.
100%.
Because Jesus is alive. You can't take his life away from him. He continues, I think, of the language of verse 24. Let me say verse 23. The former priests were many in number because they were prevented by death from continuing in office. This is this idea. There's a continual changing of the guard. Verse 24, but he holds his priesthood, Jesus, permanently because he continues forever. So the new provision that Jesus now offers, the guarantor of the better covenant, is like you can't get away from it. It's just that good, all pervasive. Why? Because he's forever alive.
And here's what's dope about it is that Numbers, at least the way I understand it, Numbers 35:28, right? For he must remain in his city of refuge until the death of the high priest. But after the death of the high priest, the manslayer may return to the land of his possession.
Wow.
So think about this. You have to be within the city of refuge and you cannot step out. If you step out
Then
while the high priest is alive,
your family can come for my neck.
Why? Because what are you doing?
I'm putting myself under the law.
You're taking your life back in your own hands. When you're in the city of refuge, you're under the protection of who?
The priest.
The high priest.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
Like the imagery is that you're in, as long as the high priest is alive and you remain in this city, you can remain as alive as the high priest.
Right. This was what I was talking about earlier, that he's the king of righteousness in the city of peace.
But what happens when the high priest dies and you're in that city?
Now you're free.
Why?
because you're no longer under that priest anymore.
Because what happened to that priest?
He's dead, and now there's a new priest.
But if the priest is dead, what happens to the life you used to live under that high priest?
Oh, it's also gone. Let's go. That's super cool.
Yeah. And so that when you come out, you come under the power of new life because the old is gone.
Let's go.
And so that when we ran to our city of refuge, we ran into the city of refuge, into Jesus, our high priest, who has done what for us?
He died.
He died for us. So when we run to him, we run to, this is why the image of, we run to him on the cross, right? This whole idea of you come to Jesus, like you come to the cross, you die with Christ, so that then you can actually now go and live
a new life,
because the high priest has died, but now lives forevermore, right? And this is, now you go into 7:24, right? But he holds his priesthood permanently because he continues forever. Consequently, he is able to save to the uttermost those who draw near to God through him, since he always lives to make intercession for them.
That's super cool.
So he's always alive, right? And so verse 26, it was indeed fitting that we should have such a high priest, holy, innocent, unstained, separated from sinners, and exalted above the heavens. He has no need, like those high priests, to offer sacrifices daily, first for his own sins and then for those of the people, since he died once for all when he offered up himself. For the law appoints men in their weakness as high priests, but the word of the oath, which came later than the law, appoints a son who has been made perfect forever. And so you see how the author's just elevating Jesus and how the law that was formerly given is not enough.
You know, one of these days, one of our future seasons of the move has to be some of these Exodus, Leviticus, because there's some really, really good news there. It's all pointing to Jesus, and I'm excited to be able to go through that at some point. But the point of this passage, and the point of every passage, it seems like so far in this episode, this season of the move, we're like 15 episodes in, everything's about Jesus. Why? Because Jesus is the guarantor of a better covenant.
Through the power of an indestructible life, and he lives to make intercession forever. So if you sense that, oh, what I've done, I can't come to God, right? There is a high priest who lives forever precisely because he already has died once and for all. You can come to him and put to death that old life and come alive into his reality, because that's why he came into the world. That's why Jesus not only came into the world, but by necessity, he had to come into the world because the law could not give life. But this faithful high priest in the order of Melchizedek, who lives forever, has died once for all, and now lives to make intercession for all those who would draw near. You can receive his life and go live free.